Chapter 371. The news of the northern battlefront city building a new kingdom slowly spread. After hearing the news, many merchants brought all kinds of resources to the city. Many circuses were also preparing to head to the city. In this era, there were not many large-scale celebrations. The merchants would take every opportunity to earn kinner. The number of merchants heading to the northern battlefront city increased rapidly. Just as the construction of the northern battlefront city was in full swing, a cavalryman galloped toward the city. Judging by his attire, it was obvious that he was a messenger. The galloping of the horse was very urgent. The messenger was running at full speed. There was an emergency passage in the northern battlefront city for messengers. No one was allowed to use it. Even though the northern battlefront city was crowded with people, no one dared to go near the emergency passage. The messenger galloped all the way without stopping. He soon arrived at the inner city. He only stopped when he reached the main gate of the Lord's mansion. Then he heard hurried footsteps. A series of urgent knocks came from the door. Su Len stood up and opened the door. He knew it was an emergency, but he was curious. Were there other powerful tribes around the city that dared to attack the northern battlefront city? My lord, there is an emergency. What is it? Su Luen quickly took a leather tube. He first checked that the seal on the leather tube was intact, and then opened it. The army of the northern battlefront city had been sent out to clean up the goblins, kobolds, and gnolls around the territory. Some of them were sent to protect the trade routes. There were not many soldiers left in the city. However, the crossbowmen were left in the city. If he wanted to, he could easily gather a few thousand men. If someone thought the northern battlefront city was weak and decided to launch a sneak attack, the crossbowmen would definitely surprise them. The messenger was panting heavily. Sweat kept pouring out of his body. His clothes were soaked in sweat. It was obvious that he had not rested at all during the journey. We've discovered traces of lizardmen in the river. Our fishing boats have been attacked. The messenger quickly reported after his breathing had calmed down. Su Luen opened the book of military intelligence prisoners in the leather tube and read it, frowning. Lizardmen? Don't they live in the swamps downstream of the Red Sand River? Why are they migrating upstream? Su Len flipped through the military report and felt a little strange. Why are the lizardmen joining in on the fun at this time? Are they here to attend my coronation? Su Len wasn't too worried. He was confident that he could defeat the lizardmen. Go and invite General Aiton and General Johnson here. Su Len put down the urgent military report and ordered the attendant beside him. The attendant accepted the order and left. About 15 minutes later, General Aiton arrived at Su Len's study. Su Len handed him the urgent military report on the table. After he finished reading it, Su Len said, "Aiton, immediately take some people downstream to investigate. I want to know more about these lizardmen. Changsun, go and gather the army we've established." "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." The two of them nodded, then turned around and began to move. Johnson turned around and went to assemble the army. Thump, thump, thump. The muffled sound of drums echoed throughout the camp. The soldiers resting in the tents immediately got up and put on their armor in an orderly manner. They listened to the orders of the flag bearers and gathered together. After the two of them left, Su Len found Hathaway and asked her to take charge of the northern city. Su Len felt a little strange about the lizardmen's movement to the north. These creatures could easily leave the swamps. They were like fish in water in the swamps and were very powerful. However, once they left the swamps and came to land, these lizardmen were even weaker than the gnolls. Their only advantage was probably their ability to regenerate and reproduce. After they left the swamps, even if the northern city was a little weak, the lizardmen were still no match for the crossbowmen. Su Len left the northern city with 300 soldiers and traveled down the river. Along the way, Su Len received more information about the lizardmen. This time, the lizardmen were very active. Su Len even suspected that they had mobilized all their forces. Why would the lizardmen mobilize all their forces at this time of the year? Migration, expansion of territory, or a food crisis? Su Len immediately ruled out the possibility of expanding their territory. The lizardmen's body structure could not allow them to leave water for long periods of time. They could only live in areas with abundant water. Ever since Su Len came to the northern wasteland, he had never heard of the lizardmen expanding from the swamps. A food crisis was not right either. During this period of time, sturgeons were swimming. There were a lot of fat sturgeons in the river. The lizardmen were good at swimming, so it was easy for them to catch sturgeons. Naturally, they would not lack food. Then, could it be that they were migrating? Sir, the lizardmen attacked our ships, but they were defeated by the army. An officer said beside Su Len. Originally, Su Len planned to clean up the northern wasteland and then celebrate the founding of the country. However, at this critical moment, the lizardmen had invaded. A large number of scouts were sent out and all kinds of information were sent back. The next day, Su Len finally collected some useful information. The lizardmen robbed many small tribes along the way, but they did not conquer them. Could it be that they lack food? Su Len looked at the information in his hands. There was a large pile of documents in front of him. They were all information about the lizardmen's movements in the past 2 days. The scouts of the northern city were very good at collecting information. With them around, nothing that happened in the northern wasteland could escape his eyes. What is this? There seems to be a dragon's roar coming from the swamps? At this time, Su Len suddenly saw a piece of information under the pile of documents. Swamp dragon's roar? Did a black dragon appear in the swamps? The most famous true dragon that liked to live in the swamps was the black dragon. As the black dragon and the white dragon, the black dragon's strength was ranked second to last. Their faces would turn into skeletons when they reached adulthood, so some people called them skeleton dragons. The black dragon's breath was acid, and it was very corrosive. They liked to eat rotten food. They would soak their food in acid and wait for it to rot before enjoying it. Taste was very important. Black dragons liked to build their nests in the swamps. They had a special ability to corrupt the water and make it unable to support the survival of animals. They also had a special ability to transform the water around them. Black dragons liked to hide under the water and sneak attack. In addition, black dragons rarely entered the forest because the trees in the forest would interfere with their mobility. Black dragons liked gold coins, and they usually collected a lot of coins. If a black dragon really appeared in the swamps, then it could indeed cause such a situation. Sullen's heart was burning. If there really was a black dragon, then it meant there were treasures here. Chapter 372. Su Len led the army along the river. He didn't bring many people with him this time, only 12 barbarian marauders and 200 half-elf archers. Although there weren't many people, they were all elites. If the 12 barbarian marauders went all out, it wouldn't take them much effort to wipe out an army of thousands. With the help of the 200 half-elf archers, it wouldn't be difficult to wipe out an army of 3,000 to 5,000 people. Dealing with some lizardmen wouldn't be a problem either. Su Len never thought of enslaving the lizardmen. They were different from orcs and gnolls. They were a very cruel and cold-blooded race. They would attack all creatures near water or swamps. After attacking other tribes, they would kill everyone, including adult males, women, and children. The lizardmen had a large population. They killed other creatures in order to gain more living space. They were not as strong as gnolls on land, but there were many of them. A lizardman tribe could have a population of thousands. If a battle broke out, they could pull out more than half of the population. Basically, every lizardman tribe had at least one spellcaster, usually a sorcerer or a druid. Lizardmen tribes had the ability to tame other monsters, such as swamp lizards, crocodiles, and so on. Some even tamed mutated lizards. The most powerful of them was a kind of thunder lizard. This kind of thunder lizard was more than 7 meters long and weighed about 2 tons. Not only did it have strong physical strength, but it could also release lightning attacks. Its power was comparable to a level 4 spell. Just as the army was moving forward, 2 drow scouts came running from the front. They were quickly stopped by the barbarian marauders in front of them. "Stop!" The barbarian put his arm out and stopped the 2 drow. "Sir, "We found traces of lizard men," one of the drow said. Su Len waved at the barbarian and let him pass. "Where are they?" "There's a northern barbarian village 5 kilometers from here. The lizard men are attacking the village. It seems that these lizard men don't know how much trouble they've caused," Su Len said coldly. "Then give them a reminder. Go and kill those lizard men. Lead the way, the rest of you follow," Su Len ordered. "Understood. Everyone, accelerate." Following his order, the army suddenly sped up. 5 kilometers was not a long distance. It only took the army of the North Town City 20 minutes to arrive. From afar, they could see plumes of black smoke rising from a village in the distance, accompanied by shouts. Su Luen clearly saw that the village was surrounded by at least 1,000 monsters in dark green clothes. They were lizard men. "It's these lizard men, right? Get rid of them," Su Len said coldly. The army of the North Town City instantly bared their fangs. Under Johnson's lead, a total of 12 barbarians rushed forward with their axes raised. At this time, the lizard men were besieging the village and didn't notice the sudden appearance of an army. In addition to the warriors, the lizard men also had a large number of archers. In front of the barbarians was the archer formation of the lizard men. The distance of a few hundred meters was quickly shortened. When the barbarians were only 200 meters away from the archers, the lizard men noticed the charging barbarians and immediately panicked. At this time, a lizard man who was clearly taller than the other lizard men roared twice, and the archers quickly calmed down. 50 lizard man archers separated from the group and began to shoot arrows at Johnson and the others. However, these arrows were no threat to the 12 barbarians. The arrows fell from the sky, and the barbarians only needed to wave their weapons a few times to easily deflect them. Moreover, the barbarians didn't slow down in the slightest. In just 2 rounds of arrows, they were already 50 meters away. Seeing this situation, the lizard men archers completely panicked. "Javelins! Fire!" With Johnson's order, the 12 barbarians grabbed javelins and hurled them over. The 1-meter-long javelins weren't light, and the spearheads were made of fine steel. They looked cold and shiny, and were abnormally sharp. "Poochie! Poochie!" The sound of flesh tearing rang out. The scales of the lizardmen archers didn't have any resistance, and they were easily torn apart by the javelins. Flesh and blood flew everywhere. Under the barbarians' powerful strength, the 12 javelins directly pierced through the lizardmen. The javelins pierced through another lizardman, and then another. In just a short time, the lizardmen archers suffered heavy casualties. Under the attack of the javelins, the lizardmen archers' formation was disrupted. They didn't care about continuing to attack, and the 12 barbarians immediately rushed in. In the face of the barbarians' giant axes, the lizardmen's scales were like paper. The 12 barbarians were like 12 meat grinders, and wherever they passed, blood and flesh flew everywhere. While the barbarians were charging, the 200 gnome archers also began to attack. After the gnome archers arrived at a predetermined position, they immediately formed a formation and began to attack. Arrows were like a torrential rain as they directly enveloped the lizardmen. The lizardmen were like wheat being cut down in rows. Faced with the sudden attack, the lizardmen's offensive was instantly interrupted. The lizardmen constantly roared in an attempt to stabilize the army, but it was all in vain. In the face of the 12 barbarian raiders, the lizardmen were completely defeated. The lizardmen warriors were attacking the village, and they couldn't leave for a while. Facing a group of archers, the barbarians were unstoppable. With the constant rain of arrows falling from the sky, the lizardmen army was on the verge of collapse. When the lizardmen warriors on the front lines heard the sounds of fighting behind them, they had a bad feeling. When the northern barbarians saw that reinforcements had arrived, they were already in despair, but their morale was instantly boosted. They waved all kinds of weapons and rushed forward without any regard for their own safety. In just a few minutes, the situation on the battlefield had changed. The lizardmen army was in danger. Su Len didn't make a move. He just stood not far away and watched the battle. If he couldn't handle a battle of this level, then this army wasn't worth his effort. Besides, as the lord of the northern city, he couldn't charge at the front every time. If he did, then what was the point of having an army? Hiss! Hiss! A hissing sound came from the lizard men, and a 5-meter-long and 3-meter-tall creature covered in scales rushed out of the river. As soon as it appeared, it rushed towards the barbarians who were slaughtering their way through the water. Roar! When the monster roared, the lizard men who had already fallen into chaos on the battlefield became even more spirited. Their originally fearful expressions were replaced by fanaticism. They roared and rushed towards the enemy. Swamp lizard? When he saw the monster, Su Len recognized it at a glance. It was a swamp lizard. Under the command of a lizard man, the swamp lizard directly rushed towards the nearest barbarian. It waved its sharp claws, and with its strength, even steel would be deformed. Roar! Giant strength! God's descent! Johnson roared, and then his body flashed with light. His originally tall and strong body grew even taller. His muscles bulged, and his original height of 2.1 meters broke through to 2.5 meters. His skin turned bronze and shined with a metallic luster. Because the barbarians had transformed, they could no longer wear armor. After all, the northern city didn't have armor that could change size according to their body. In addition, these barbarians were very skilled in battle, so these 12 barbarians didn't wear any armor. They didn't even have a shield. Only their clothes were special, so they wouldn't be torn apart. Otherwise, they would be running around naked. After activating Celestial Descent, Johnson, who was already very powerful, directly stepped into the legendary realm. Facing the swamp lizard that pounced on him, Johnson had no intention of dodging. He used his arm to block the swamp lizard's attack. Boom! Waves of air rolled. After seeing this scene, the lizardmen army, who were still boiling with anger, suddenly felt as if their throats were being choked. Their angry roars were stuck in their throats, and what happened next made them even more terrified. Rise! Johnson roared, and the veins on his strong arms bulged. Then, the swamp lizard's huge body was directly thrown to the ground. Johnson faintly smiled, but in the eyes of the lizard men, this smile was even more terrifying than the smile of a demon. Johnson reached out and grabbed his axe. Taking advantage of the moment when the swamp lizard got up, he jumped on top of it. He waved the axe in his hand, and the sharp edge of the axe tore through the swamp lizard's tough scales, leaving a terrible wound on its body. The immense pain caused the swamp lizard to go crazy. His body rolled, wanting to flip Johnson over. However, Johnson had been prepared for this. He jumped down first, and took advantage of the opportunity to fiercely chop the swamp lizard's abdomen with his axe. This was one of the swamp lizard's weak points. The sharp axe tore through the scales without any hindrance, and directly opened a terrible wound on the swamp lizard's abdomen. Blood splattered everywhere, and scorching hot blood spurted out. Even the internal organs were clearly visible. After suffering such a serious injury, even a giant beast like the swamp lizard was on the verge of death. Seeing their trump card being easily dealt with, the lizardmen couldn't hold on any longer. Their morale fell to the bottom, and many lizardmen began to flee. However, it was already too late. The other 11 barbarians also roared and activated God's Descent. The 12 barbarians were like 12 sharp knives, and all the enemies in front of them were torn apart. The lizardmen's formation was directly penetrated by them. Chapter 373. The lizardmen army collapsed, and the barbarians that had been guarding the village rushed out to pursue. These barbarians hated the lizardmen to the bone, so they naturally wouldn't give up this opportunity for revenge. During the pursuit of the lizardmen, there was a small incident. A small group of lizardmen had gathered together and retreated. However, they didn't scatter and flee. Instead, they fought as they retreated. Some of the northern barbarians who pursued them were even killed instead. This situation quickly attracted Su Luan's attention, and he immediately ordered the archers to take special care of them. Soon, the lizardmen were wiped out, and the few that remained fled. But since they were targeted, how could they be allowed to escape? A barbarian marauder rushed over. When the lizard men saw the incoming barbarians, their expressions changed drastically. One of the lizard men waved a withered vine cane, and a green light appeared. Thorny vines. The lizard men tossed a few creatures out. Vines instantly sprouted from the ground in a dozen meters around them. These plants grew wildly as soon as they appeared. In a breath's time, they had wrapped around the barbarian marauder and bound him in place. These vines were covered in sharp barbs, but against the marauder's bronze skin, these vines had no effect at all. The vines grew rapidly, quickly wrapping around the marauder's legs and extending upwards. Seeing the marauder trapped, the lizard man let out a sigh of relief. But just as he thought it was safe, the marauder swung his axe. The tough vines only lasted a few blows before they were completely cut apart. The barbarian leapt out of the vines. Seeing this, the lizard man instinctively wanted to flee. However, the barbarian was faster. Before the lizard man could move, the barbarian was already brandishing its weapon, ready to cut him down. "Leave one alive." Sullen's voice suddenly rang out. The marauder's weapon was forcefully deflected, and it slashed the lizardman's nose into the ground. The lizard man felt a chill run through his body, and he couldn't help but fall to the ground, cold sweat pouring out. The battle had basically come to an end. A large number of lizardmen had died, and the 12 marauders were unharmed. The northern barbarians had also stopped their pursuit. After the battle was over, the soldiers of northern Battlefront City began to clean up the battlefield. The lizard men who were still alive gave them a quick death and collected all their equipment. It was at this time that a barbarian marauder came over with a strong northern barbarian. "Boss, this person wants to see you. Let him come over." Su Luan glanced at him and nodded. The northern barbarian followed the other barbarian with a face full of reverence. "Respected sir, thank you for lending us a helping hand in our most dangerous time. You will be our most respected guest, and we are willing to pledge our loyalty to you." "How many people are in your village?" Sulen asked. "My lord, our village originally had 500 people. Among them, 157 were warriors. Now there are 116 people left." "All right. I am the lord of Northgard City, Sulen. I accept your loyalty." Sulen nodded. Although there were many people in Northgard City, he didn't mind having more people. "Pack up your things and then follow them to clean up the battlefield." "Yes, sir." "Congratulations, host. Under your leadership, your army has won a great victory. You have received 2,300 experience points, and you have received the item Fine Iron X3. Congratulations, host. You have defeated the lizard men. You have received a gold treasure chest. Congratulations, host. You have saved a northern barbarian village. Your relationship with this village has reached respect. Ding! A northern barbarian village has pledged loyalty to you." A series of system notifications rang in his ears. Sulen looked at them and closed the system interface. "Bring the captive here." "Yes, sir." The drow immediately turned and left. After a while, the drow came back with the lizard man. "Lizard man, you should know the drow next to you. You should also know their methods. Now answer whatever I ask you. If you dare to lie to me, this drow will let you have a taste of their traditional craftsmanship." After seeing the lizard man, Sulen smiled at him. However, this smile made him feel cold all over. Understood." The lizard man trembled and nodded. "That's good." Sulen nodded. "Tell me, why did you attack this village?" "We did it for food and weapons," the lizard man said. Sulen glanced at him and said, "Hee, food and weapons? Do you think I'm stupid?" "I'll leave it to you." Sulen waved his hand at the drow next to him. Then the drow directly carried the lizard man not far away. Soon, a burst of miserable screams came through. About 5 minutes later, Sulen asked the drow to bring him back. "Tell me, why did you attack that village?" Sulen looked at the wounded lizard man and asked, Sir, we really did it for food and seeds." The lizard man cried. "It seems that you won't cry until you see the coffin. It's the sturgeon migration season now. You shouldn't be short of food. You're telling me it's for food?" The lizard man said, "Sir, what I said is true. You have to believe me. Our tribe is preparing to migrate. We robbed the food to find a place to plant it after we migrate." "Well, let's say what you said is true." Su Len nodded and continued, "You want to migrate? Why?" Because. The lizard man hesitated. Su Len sneered. "It seems that the lesson just now was not enough. Milton, teach him a lesson." "Yes, sir." Milton smiled and then took the lizard man away again as he begged for mercy. Soon, the lizardman's rhythmic screams were heard. About 5 minutes later, the drow brought the lizard man back again. "Are you awake now?" "Awake! Awake! What a scumbag! Why do you have to beat me to tell you?" Su Len shook his head and said, "Tell me, why are you migrating?" Because a hydra suddenly appeared in the swamp." Su Len was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He immediately understood why these lizard men were migrating. He also realized that he was wrong about the black dragon in the swamp. As dragons, they were very powerful and liked to enslave lizard men, kobolds, gnolls, and other races. If a black dragon appeared in the swamp, these lizard men should have been taken in as subordinates by the black dragon instead of being forced to migrate. As for the dragon's roar that the scouts heard in the swamp, it should be the hydra's roar. Although the hydra was called a snake, it actually had some dragon blood in it. It was a dragon-descendant creature. However, unlike ordinary dragon-descendant creatures, the hydra's strength was almost comparable to a real dragon. The hydra was also known as the hydra. It was a powerful monster with 9 heads. Their heads had some characteristics of dragons, and their bodies were covered with dragon scales. Its 9 heads could spit out venom or other breath attacks. Furthermore, they had powerful poison and recovery abilities. These creatures were similar to dragons. The weakest among them was at the legendary level. In some ancient books, the most powerful hydra was an immemorial abhorrence. However, this immemorial abhorrence hydra had been slain in ancient times. Su Len did not know if there were any hydras of this level. Although hydras had the strength of a legendary level, they did not know how to gather subordinates. Most of the hydras were not normal. Because they had 9 heads, they had 9 consciousnesses, and they would compete with each other for control. Like demons, hydras were chaotic and evil creatures. They would attack any creature they saw. When there were no enemies, the 9 heads of hydras would even kill each other. It could be said that hydras were in a state of schizophrenia all year round. It was not an ordinary split, but 9. Therefore, hydras that were in a state of chaos for a long time did not gather subordinates. These lizard men did not want to die, so they could only leave the swamp and migrate. Although the hydra was chaotic, its fighting strength was not weak. It was even stronger than a white dragon. Its regenerative ability was very strong. As long as one of its heads was not dead, the hydra would not die. As long as it had enough time, even if only one of its heads was left, it could grow back the other 8 heads. At the same time, the environment of the hydra's living area would also change. For example, the swamp would become a poisonous swamp. In the area it lived in, the swamp would be highly toxic. If the hydra was not dealt with, perhaps after next year, the sturgeon in the Red Sand River would no longer swim. The poisonous water in the swamp would pollute the river, and from the downstream to the estuary, a large number of creatures would die. Of course, the hydra's body was not ordinary. Its skin was comparable to a real dragon's skin. Its blood was also a precious alchemy material that could be used to make dragon blood potions. Its fangs, scales, organs, and so on were all very good materials. After learning that there was a hydra here, Su Luen had already regarded it as prey. Although the hydra was powerful, it was still relatively easy to deal with compared to the dragon. This was because the dragon liked to enslave a large number of monsters. The older the dragon, the more creatures it could enslave. Many times, the dragon-slaying teams were killed by the dragon servants before they could even see the dragon. What's more, dragons were very cunning. Among the chromatic dragons, except for the red dragon, the other chromatic dragons liked to sneak attack. Hydras, on the other hand, were different. The 9 heads fought with each other without thinking, so it was easier to kill a hydra. Chapter 374. Apart from your tribe, where are the other lizardmen tribes? Su Len continued to ask. The swamp was huge, and there was more than one lizardmen tribe living there. Now that the swamp was occupied by the Hydra, the lizardmen migrating north would definitely cause chaos in the area. I don't know about the other tribes. They didn't come with us. I only know that some of them went northwest, the lizardman druid said. Su Len then asked a few other questions, and then let the drows take care of him. There were not many captives left in this war, mainly because the lizardmen were not suitable to be slaves. After dealing with these matters, Su Len opened the storage space and opened the golden treasure chest that he had just obtained. Congratulations! You have opened the golden treasure chest. You have obtained the special building blueprint, Eagle's Nest. Hearing that he had obtained a special blueprint, Sullen's eyes lit up, and he immediately checked it. Construction Blueprint Eagle's Nest. This is a blueprint that records how to build an eagle's nest. After using it, you can build an eagle's nest. Eagle's Nest. You can train and recruit eagles to scout or send messages. Seeing the introduction of the eagle's nest, Su Len was overjoyed. Although there was magic communication in this world, the magic communication stone was expensive and could only be used a few times. It was impossible to distribute it to the entire army. Now that there were eagles to scout and send messages, the efficiency could be said to be several times higher. Moreover, the eagles were birds of prey, so there was no need to worry about being preyed on by other birds of prey in the sky. With these flying eagles, the scouts would be able to quickly send news back. Although it was not as fast as the magic communication stone, the cost was lower. After putting away the blueprint, Su Len prepared to go back and build the eagle's nest. Pack up the spoils and bring these people back first. Su Len led many soldiers and the northern barbarians who had just submitted to him and left the ruined village to return to Northern Town City. After knowing that a hydra had appeared in the swamp, Su Len did not immediately go there. Instead, he prepared to deal with the lizardmen in front of him first. After returning to Northern Town City, the scouts began to collect traces of the lizardmen, and then the army of Northern Town City would be sent out to encircle and eliminate them. The strength of the lizardmen could only be considered average. The only noteworthy thing was the spellcasters among them. These spellcasters could cast spells to enslave the swamp beasts. However, unlike other spellcasters, lizardman spellcasters were more focused on enslaving and cultivating swamp beasts, so they could not cast many spells. With the presence of the barbarian plunderers, the swamp beasts they tamed were simply a joke. Su Len found some craftsmen and prepared to build an eagle's nest in the military camp. An eagle's nest was not a bird's nest, but a special institution for training, cultivation, and reproduction. The eagle's nest was not small. It could be divided into 3 parts: the training ground, the incubation room, and the nest. The construction of the eagle's nest required 50 cubic meters of stone, 120 cubic meters of wood, and 30 iron ingots. Su Len had the warehouse hand over the materials to the craftsmen and told them to follow the blueprint. After arranging the construction work, Su Len began to look for suitable eagle's nest. After the eagle's nest was built in the game, one could recruit eagle's nest with money. This function did not exist in the real world. One had to capture some eagle's nest first, then send them to the eagle's nest to be tamed. After the taming was complete, professional training was required. Only after passing this could the eagle's nest become a messenger eagle. Capturing eagle's nest naturally did not require him to do it himself. Su Len had the city hall issue a mission to capture eagle's nest and collect eagle's eggs. 2 days later, a large number of adventurers sent all kinds of eagle's nests to the city hall. The eagle's nest didn't need to be too big for the eagle's nest, so the large eagle's nest was eliminated. Although they couldn't be used as messenger eagles, they could still be raised as pets. Su Len selected a few medium-sized eagle's nest from these eagle's nest. He was going to send them to the eagle's nest for training after it was built. The craftsmen in North Town City were very experienced in construction. It didn't take much time to build an eagle's nest. It only took 5 days for the eagle's nest to be completed. Su Len went to the military camp. A strange building had been erected next to the camp. This building did not look like a normal house. The eagle's nest was surrounded by a 5-meter-tall wall. Inside the wall was a training ground. On both sides of the training ground were incubators and nests. There were also all kinds of training tools on the training ground. Eagle's nest. Special building. The eagle's nest can be used to cultivate, train, and breed eagles. After strict training, the eagles can be used for reconnaissance and communication. Current number of eagles. 0 for 500. Please replenish the eagles as soon as possible. Number of eagle trainers. 0/5. Please select 5 suitable eagle trainers. Daily maintenance. 500 kinnar. Training speed +18. Indestructible +22. Disease reduction +25. Incubation speed +20. Mutation +2. Su-Len was very satisfied after checking the attributes of the eagle's nest. The eagle's nest had an additional mutation +2. The mutation attribute had appeared once when Su-Len built the Cryopterus incubator. After that, a Cryopterus mutated and evolved into an ice Quetzalcoatlus. Now that the eagle's nest had this attribute, Su-Len wondered what kind of surprise it would bring. The eagle's nest required 5 eagle trainers. Su-Len opened the building's attributes to check the requirements. Even ordinary people could become eagle trainers. With the blessing of the building's attributes, they could quickly master the skills of training and training the eagles. However, if he wanted to make the eagle trainers better, he would need someone with talent. It would be best if they had the talent of animal companions. Usually, only rangers and druids had the talent of animal companions. The only ones who had this talent in Northern Town were half-elves. Su-Len found Grace and asked her to recommend 5 half-elves to become eagle trainers. With the half-elves as eagle trainers, the eagle's nest could finally be put to use. Su-Len sent the eagles he had captured to the eagle's nest for taming. It would take a month to tame the eagles. The eagle's nest had an attribute that increased the taming speed. With the half-elves' animal companion's talent, the taming time was reduced to 20 days. Su-Len nodded in satisfaction when he saw that he could receive a large number of messenger eagles in 20 days. After checking out the eagle's nest, Su-Len began to increase the number of eagle trainers in the army. From now on, every scout in Northern Town City would have to carry an eagle. A squad of 50 people would have 3 eagles, and an army of 1,000 would have 3. Other than the army, the caravans, and the city hall in Northern Town City would also need eagles to send messages. Mirror Lake City and Centaur City would also have eagles to send messages. When all of Sullen's territories had eagles, the speed of sending messages would greatly increase. Of course, in addition to the eagle, Su-Luen did not cancel the magic communication stone. These magic communication stones would supplement the eagle's communication. When there was a major event or an emergency, and the eagle's communication speed was slow, the magic communication stone would be used at this time. While Su-Len was busy building the eagles, Northern Town City's army was clearing out the lizardmen tribes that were migrating to the north. At the same time, they recruited a dozen Northern Town barbarian tribes of various sizes. These Northern Town barbarian tribes ranged from 3 to 500 people to 100 people. In total, Northern Town City had gained 2,000 people. These Northern Town barbarians had strong bodies. Su-Len transferred some of them to the army. The barbarians were also part of the Northern Town barbarians, so their leveling up was the same as the barbarians. They also had berserk like the barbarians, so they could only form their own groups. Other than these barbarians, 2 half-elven villages had also joined Northern Town City. Su-Len was very welcoming to the half-elves. He had always wanted to recruit more half-elves, but these half-elves were not willing. Also, because of Grace, Su-Len could not force them. This time, when the lizardmen invaded, Su-Len took advantage of the opportunity when the lizardmen were besieging the half-elven villages. He helped them defeat the lizardmen and gained their favor. That was how he recruited the 2 half-elven villages into Northern Town City. Now, the number of half-elves in Northern Town City had exceeded 1,000. While he was clearing out the lizardmen, Su-Len did not forget about the Hydra in the poisonous swamp in the south. 1/3 of the scouts in Northern Town City had gone to the poisonous swamp to collect information. In order to cooperate with them, Sulen asked Andre to lead the wizard apprentices to make some antidotes, insect repellents, underwater breathing potions, and a few other potions that could be used in the swamp. With the help of these potions, these drows could enter the poisonous swamp more easily and obtain the information Sulen wanted. Although Sulen was powerful, he would not underestimate his opponents, especially dangerous targets like the Hydra. There were two origins of the Hydra's bloodline. One was said to be from the ancient Hydra with multiple heads, and the other was from the Hydra. However, research had found that the Hydra's body had both of these bloodlines. Hathaway was also very interested when she heard that Sulen had found a Hydra. Therefore, when she heard that Sulen was preparing to deal with the Hydra, she also came up with various ideas and plans. The most annoying thing about the Hydra, other than its powerful recovery ability, was its venom. According to the legends, even the gods were very afraid of the venom of the ancient Hydra. Although the Hydra in the poisonous swamp was not as powerful, it still did not feel good to be bitten by it. Without a special antidote, even a legendary figure would not be able to survive for long. Sulen did not want to test whether the Hydra's venom was more powerful or if his body was stronger. It was not easy to get rid of the Hydra's venom. This kind of antidote required a lot of precious magic materials. Luckily, most of the materials could be found in the northern town city's Mystery Plane and the Sky Garden. He could just collect them and use them directly. The few that he did not have, he could just ask the merchants to buy them or issue a quest in the city hall. Chapter 375. After a friendly match with Hathaway, Sulen left the astrology platform feeling refreshed. Hathaway's mastery of Greece was getting better and better. Even the little succubus Chrissy couldn't compare. Sulen and Hathaway discussed transfiguration, wizard's hand, art of tentacles, and other magic books in detail. In the end, Hathaway was exhausted and had to end the match. Hathaway also had some new products. For example, a special oil that could be used together with grease. It was made by Hathaway using the essence of more than 10 flowers. Not only was it smooth, but the smell was also very fragrant. Just a little bit was enough to make it very smooth. They walked out of the wizard tower through the stairs. The elemental energy in the wizard tower was very dense. The elemental pool in the wizard tower had transformed the entire wizard tower into a place where elemental energy was active. Wizards could live in this environment like fish in water. Boom! A muffled sound was suddenly heard, followed by a burst of black smoke coming out of a laboratory not far away. Two golems quickly rushed over, and the door of the laboratory opened. A man in a tattered sorcerer's robe ran out of the room, wearing a pitch-black robe. The two golems didn't say anything and directly sprayed liquid at the man. "Stop! Stop! I don't have any radiation on me," the man said angrily. However, the two golems didn't care about his protests. They kept spraying the man's body back and forth before stopping. Then, the golems sprayed the lab again. Sulen finally realized that the black silhouette was Wizard Lorraine. Wizard Lorraine also saw Sulen next to him. After being stunned for a moment, Wizard Lorraine smiled awkwardly and said, "Haha! Experiment mistake. Basic. Hehe. No problem. No problem. It's just that these golems are making a big deal out of nothing. Mr. Sulen, can you ask Ms. Hathaway to change the settings of the golems? They're too rude." "I think that's a good idea. Magus experiments are very dangerous, so these precautions are necessary." Su Luan looked at Luo Lin, who was like a drowned rat, with a trace of mockery in his eyes, and said righteously, "All right, I knew it. You guys just want to see a joke." Wizard Lorraine snapped his fingers and used a cleaning spell to clean the dust and water off his body. "You're underestimating me. I've been professionally trained in noble etiquette. No matter how funny it is, I won't laugh unless I can't hold it in." Sulen left the wizard tower in a good mood and returned to the Lord's castle. At that moment, the drow scouts who went to the swamp came back with some information. "Sir, we found the Hydra in the poisonous swamp," the drow with a scar on his face said. "Where is it in the poisonous miasma swamp?" Su Luan leaned against the chair in the study and asked. Scarface took out a parchment scroll and said, "Sir, This is a simple map of the swamp that we drew. He handed the parchment scroll over. Su Len took the parchment scroll and spread it on the table. There was a very simple topographic map drawn on the parchment scroll. A winding line represented a river, and the paths in the swamp were also marked. In a place that looked like a lake in the swamp, there was a mark of a multi-headed snake. In addition to the snake, Su Len also found a few marks of small people on the west side of the swamp. This snake is a 9-headed snake, right? Su Len pointed at the map and asked. Yes, sir. Su Len continued to ask, what are those small people on the west side of the swamp? Sir, we found a swamp giant tribe there. There are about a dozen of them, Scarface explained. Swamp giants. Su Len looked up at him in surprise. After confirming again, Su Len nodded. The swamp giants were one of the branches of the giant species in the multiverse. They were also known as swamp giants, and they generally lived in the swamps of the material world. There was a swamp plane between the water elemental plane and the earth elemental plane, and a large number of swamp giants also lived there. The swamp giants of the swamp plane were much stronger than those of the prime material world. Adult swamp giant warriors in the swamp plane were around 6 meters tall and weighed around 8,000 pounds. Females were slightly shorter and had a lifespan of around 300 years. The swamp giants of the prime material world were around 4 meters tall and weighed around 5,000 pounds. Swamp giants were grayish-brown and usually did not have armor on their bodies. After all, ordinary metals could not survive in the swamp for a long time. However, they usually had a layer of mud on their bodies. Their main weapons were javelins, giant axes, and rocks. Their attacks were very long-range. Swamp giants were weaker than their cousins, the frost giants, and only a little smarter than the hill giants. After hearing that there were swamp giants in the swamp, Su Len suddenly had an idea. Sir, these swamp giants are not on good terms with the Hydra. When we were collecting information, we found that there was a conflict between the two, Scarface said respectfully. Sure enough, a mountain cannot accommodate 2 tigers. Su Len smiled. The swamp giants were not weak. Although they could not compare to the frost giants, they were not much weaker. Even if a group of a dozen swamp giants could not defeat a Hydra, they would not be too far off. After receiving information about the swamp, Su Len started his preparations. 2 days later, Su Len brought Hathaway and the 12 barbarian marauders out of Northgard City. The work of Northgard City was handed over to Su Len. The weakest person in the group was at 4th rank, and after casting a group haste spell, their speed was very fast. It only took a day for Sullen's group to reach the edge of the swamp. It was Su Luan's first time to come to the poisonous miasma swamp. Su Luan frowned slightly at the environment of the swamp. First of all, because of the large amount of water in the swamp, the ground here was basically not dry and many places were like mud. Stepping on it would slightly sink, and lifting it would cause a large amount of mud to rise. More importantly, some places that looked like roads might be traps. Stepping on them would cause them to sink into the mud, and if they were not rescued in time, they would quickly be swallowed up. Apart from the ground, the swamp was also filled with a sour smell. This was the smell of animal corpses, decaying plants, and so on. Some of the swamps would bubble up from time to time. The air was very humid, and under the sunlight, the entire swamp was covered in water vapor, making the swamp's environment hot and humid. Apart from this, there was also a large number of mosquitoes flying above the swamp. If an adventurer entered this kind of area unprepared, even if they did not sink into the mud, just the bites of mosquitoes would take away half of their life. These mosquitoes carried a large number of diseases, and being bitten by them was very likely to cause all kinds of diseases. If they did not have mosquito repellents, it was better not to approach this place. Su Len took out a few bottles of insect repellent and distributed them to everyone. The repellent was light green in color and emitted a kind of grassy fragrance. After using it, they would not be bitten by mosquitoes for a certain period of time. In addition to the repellent, Hathaway gave everyone a lighten spell. This spell could greatly reduce the body's weight, and they would not have to worry about sinking into the mud. It was very convenient to move in the swamp. Su Len took out a sky lantern and cast invisibility on everyone. With invisibility, They would not have to worry about being discovered by the swamp giant or the hydra. Apart from this, everyone also took antidotes. There was a lot of miasma in the swamp, and if they were not prepared, it was very likely to cause dizziness and nausea. In serious cases, they might even fall into a coma. In this kind of environment, spellcasters also had to reduce their magic consumption in order to avoid not being able to exert their full strength in the face of danger. After all the preparations were completed, the group entered the swamp. Because of the hydra, the lizard men in the swamp had been forced to migrate. Even if there were some that stayed, they would hide in some remote areas so they did not encounter any lizard men. Although there were no lizard men, there were many other creatures in the swamp, such as swamp lizards, swamp crocodiles, and some birds and snakes that lived in the swamp. It was said that there were also titan pythons living in the swamp. It was a fierce beast with a challenge rating of level 15, but this kind of titan pythons generally lived in swamps with a warm climate in the south. Su Len and the others approached the area where the hydra lived according to the route on the map. Su Len needed to check the situation of the hydra first. In addition to the hydra, he also needed to know about the swamp giant on the west side of the swamp. Although scouts had already explored it before, he still wanted to see it for himself. Although the swamp looked dirty and filled with all kinds of miasma, in fact, it was very rich in food. There were a lot of fish living in the swamp, and the hydra did not have to worry about a lack of food here. This is where the trouble is. Su Len and the others hid in an area with lush reeds. A group of black clouds flew quickly in the sky. These black clouds were made up of countless swamp mosquito, and there were as many as 1,000,000 of them. The swamp mosquito was much larger than ordinary mosquitoes, and with long mouths, they looked ferocious and disgusting. If they swarmed together, they could directly suck a person's blood dry. For someone like Su Len who had trypophobia, it was simply unbearable. Fortunately, they had insect repellents on them, and they were in stealth mode. The mosquitoes did not notice them, and soon the mosquitoes flew away, and the group continued on their way. Suddenly, a dull dragon's roar came from the distance. Sullen's eyes lit up. Hydra! It seems that we have found our target. Everyone hurried to the place where the sound came from. After 10 minutes of walking through the swamp, the sound was getting closer and closer. Soon, Su Len saw the tall figure of the hydra. At this time, the hydra was attacking a 3-meter-long crocodile. Under the siege of the hydra's many heads, the crocodile only lasted a few minutes before it was killed by the hydra. Then, Su Len saw the 9 heads began to fight for food. Chapter 376. The hydra's 9 heads fought with each other, and a 3-meter-long swamp crocodile was torn to pieces in just a few minutes before being devoured by the 9 heads. Su Len did not continue approaching. Although he had invisibility, it was not omnipotent. There were many ways to counter it. For example, some true dragons had true eyes that could see through invisibility and illusions. Some spells and magic tools could also achieve the same effect. After eating its fill, the hydra in the distance slowly swam into the depths of the swamp. This hydra was about 18 meters long and covered in a layer of dark green scales. Its head looked very similar to a dragon's, which meant that the bloodline of this hydra was closer to that of a dragon. Su Len followed the hydra from afar and did not get too close. After walking for about 10 minutes, the hydra entered a pool to rest. After confirming the hydra's location, Su Len and the others quietly left. They then began to search the west side of the swamp. This time, their target was the swamp giants. The swamp giants were actually easier to find than the hydra. After all, they were different from the hydra. The swamp giants had built a small tribe in the swamp, which was easier to find than the pool where the hydra lived. Soon, Su Len found the swamp giants according to the markings on the map. These swamp giants had just finished their hunt. A 4-meter-tall, muscular swamp giant was carrying a creature that looked like a hippopotamus back to the tribe. There were 5 or 6 swamp giants in this small tribe. This swamp giant is the leader creature. At this moment, Hathaway's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He's a legendary swamp giant. Su Len nodded and became even more cautious. It was no wonder that a legendary swamp giant dared to fight the hydra head-on. The The Hydra had 9 heads, which gave it a great advantage in a one-on-one fight. Facing the Hydra was like being surrounded by several monsters. The leader of the swamp giants alone was not a match for the Hydra, but with the swamp giants beside it, their strength was not much different from the Hydra's. Originally, the best place in this swamp belonged to the swamp giant, but after the Hydra came here, half of it was occupied. Now, both sides wanted to kill each other, but their strength was close and they were still in a stalemate. But this time, Su Lin planned to add fuel to the fire. Among the spells, there was a shape-shifting spell, which allowed the user to transform into other forms to fight. Of course, there were also some spells that were just for show, such as camouflage. Camouflage was not a high-level spell, but it had a special feature, which was that it could disguise a wizard as other creatures. Camouflage was different from illusion spells. Camouflage could disguise oneself very closely to the real body. Other than the real body's strength, it could even disguise one's scent. However, camouflage required a casting medium, which was to disguise something on a creature's body, such as hair, scales, and so on. With an idea in mind, Su Lin began to look for a suitable target. At this time, the swamp giants came back from hunting. About 3 kilometers away from the swamp giant tribe, Su Lin found a swamp giant who came back with prey. This swamp giant was 3.5 meters tall and should have just reached adulthood. At this time, it was carrying a long spear and a deer happily walking home. But this poor swamp giant did not know that it had been targeted by the sinister Su Lin. Tentacle entanglement. 5 or 6 3-meter-long black tentacles suddenly appeared from the ground and entangled the swamp giant in an instant. The swamp giant's reaction was a little slow after being attacked suddenly. Its body subconsciously wanted to break free, but it did not succeed. Sullen's body flashed, and the purple dragon halberd in his hand carried a large amount of lightning power and instantly whipped the swamp giant's body. The powerful lightning power from the purple dragon halberd entered the swamp giant's body, and the struggling swamp giant's body suddenly became stiff. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Hathaway immediately cast hypnosis on the swamp giant. But to her surprise, the hypnosis did not work. The swamp giant was immune to her spell. Bang! Sullen's body flashed, and the purple dragon halberd in his hand hit the back of the swamp giant's head. Then, the 3-meter-tall swamp giant crashed to the ground. Su Lin waved the purple dragon halberd and said, "You could have just fainted. Why did you have to have me use physical hypnosis on you? Hurry up and cast a few more spells on him. If he suddenly wakes up, things will be troublesome." Hathaway rolled her eyes at Su Lin and deliberately dragged out her words. "Got it." Then, flashes of light flashed, and various negative statuses were placed on the swamp giant. The swamp giant could not resist. After subduing the swamp giant, Sullen's plan officially began. Hessian collected some hair and blood from the swamp giant and then cast disguise on Su Lin. With a flash of light, Sullen's body was wrapped in light. The next second, he turned into a 3-meter-tall swamp giant, exactly the same as the swamp giant that had fallen asleep next to him. "How is it?" Su Lin stretched his body. "Not bad. It's the same as before." "That's good. This spell lasts for half an hour. It must be completed within this half an hour," Hathaway reminded him. "Don't worry." Su Lin waved his hand. Then, Su Lin disguised himself as a swamp giant and walked toward the pool where the Hydra lived. The swamp giant was placed in a magic formation not far from the swamp giant's camp. Su Lin was very fast and arrived at the pool in a short while. At this time, the Hydra was hiding in the pool and sleeping. Su Lin snapped his fingers, and a huge fireball appeared in front of him. With a gentle wave of his hand, the fireball fell directly into the pool. Boom! A deafening sound rang out, and the dark green pool water flew more than 10 meters high. Roar! Then, an angry dragon roar sounded. The next second, 9 ferocious heads rushed out of the water. However, as soon as they came out of the water, they were hit by a long spear. Blood splattered and a sharp pain came. The other heads of the Hydra swayed and bit at him. Su Lin naturally wouldn't stay still. He dodged in a flash, and the long spear in his hand hit another head of the Hydra again. The Hydra, who had been disturbed from its sleep and had a bad temper, was hit twice in a row. It became even angrier. The pool rolled, and its huge body directly stood up. After seeing that it was a swamp giant who attacked it, the old and new hatred added up. The Hydra's 18 eyes turned red, and its cold and crazy eyes made even Sullen's hair stand on end. Acid spray. The next second, one of the Hydra's heads suddenly spewed a large amount of stinky acid. Sullen's expression changed, and he dodged to the side. However, as soon as he dodged the acid attack, another acid attack was already waiting there. At this time, Su Len couldn't care about anything else. If he was attacked, his camouflage would be destroyed. He dodged in a rather embarrassing manner, and then his body jumped to the right as much as possible. The Hydra's breathing came from behind him. Su Len felt the sour smell in the air, and then his body was enveloped by another acid spray. He still couldn't dodge it. The Hydra had too many heads. With so many heads working together, Su Len felt like he was fighting 1 against 9. This was cheating. How many times can you dodge with 9 heads continuously spitting out attacks? Unless he used teleportation to escape, there was no way he could dodge at all. The stinky corrosive liquid enveloped Su Len. At this time, a light flashed, and a translucent energy barrier appeared on the surface of Sullen's body, blocking all the acid outside. However, the area where the acid and the energy barrier came in contact kept making sizzling sounds. The Hydra's acid spray was not much different from the Black Dragon's acid spray. Although the amount of acid spray from each head was not as much as the Black Dragon's, the total amount was several times that of the Black Dragon's. The energy barrier on Sullen's body appeared on the surface of his body. This spell was cast quickly, but its defensive power was not enough when facing a legendary enemy. Although it blocked the acid spray, it looked like he couldn't hold on much longer. However, a short period of time was enough. Mage armor. Ice armor. 2 flashes of light blocked the Hydra's acid spray. Then Sullen's figure flashed and rushed out of the range of the acid spray. The Hydra thought that it had killed the swamp giant that dared to disturb its sleep and attack it. But the next second, the swamp giant rushed out of the acid spray and once again hit one of its heads with the spear in its hand. After being attacked consecutively, the Hydra became even angrier and rushed forward with a roar. This time, Su Luen didn't entangle with the Hydra anymore. His figure flashed and he ran away. Although the Hydra couldn't fly and its body was big, its movement speed was not slow. His body moved quickly on the water. Seeing the Hydra chasing after him, Su Len did not panic. In fact, he was not running at full speed. Besides, he still had Flash in his hand. He could leave the battle at any time if he wanted to. Su Len used camouflage to lure the Hydra toward the swamp giant's tribe. The two were very fast. It only took about 10 minutes for them to get close to the swamp giant's tribe. When they ran quickly, they caused a lot of noise. The swamp giants in the tribe also noticed Su Len and the Hydra. When they saw that the Hydra was chasing their companion, the swamp giants roared angrily. The swamp giant in the lead picked up its weapon and rushed out. At this time, Su Luen had run to their predetermined location, where the sleeping swamp giant was hiding. Su Luen's body suddenly accelerated, and in an instant rushed into the concealment formation and disappeared. Chapter 377. After Su Len entered the magic array, he instantly disappeared and reappeared several kilometers away. At the same time, the magic array lost its effect and the swamp giant woke up from its slumber. However, by the time it woke up, the Hydra had already rushed over. The infuriated Hydra didn't notice the difference between the two swamp giants and directly attacked. The two heads bit at the swamp giant from the left and right. Before the swamp giant could react, it was bitten by the Hydra. In the next second, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in the Hydra's eyes as its head exerted force and tore off the swamp giant's arm. Roar! The swamp giant felt intense pain as blood gushed out. However, as a rank 4 creature, it was an entire rank lower than the Hydra. Now that it was bitten by the Hydra, it had no chance to resist. In just a few breaths, the swamp giant was killed. The swamp giant leader, who was rushing over, saw this scene and its eyes instantly became bloodshot. He grabbed a boulder and threw it at the Hydra. Bang! The rock was like a meteor as it ruthlessly struck one of the Hydra's heads. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Seeing their comrade killed, the swamp giants wanted nothing more than to cut the Hydra into pieces. They roared and charged forward. With 13 swamp giants and a Hydra, the entire battlefield became extremely intense. No one could approach the battle between the giants and the Hydra. The battle was extremely intense, but it wouldn't be easy to determine a victor. Although the swamp giants clearly had the advantage in numbers, the Hydra was much larger. Part of its body was hidden in the swamp, making it impossible for the swamp giants to attack it. Its 9 heads fought with different people. The swamp giants didn't have much of an advantage against such a large monster. However, both sides were already in a heated battle. Even if the victor couldn't be determined, both sides would suffer. Su Len led the marauders and barbarians to secretly observe the battle from a distance. He wasn't in a hurry to take action. Instead, he took out a set of tables and chairs from his spatial storage and set them up. He took out all kinds of dried fruits and munched on sunflower seeds while chatting with Hathaway. Come on. Yes, that's it. You should chop off its head with an axe. Su Len grabbed a handful of pistachios, crushed the shells with his palm, and ate them. It seems that these swamp giants are not going to make it. According to the size of the Hydra, this level of attack is not enough to kill him. Those swamp giants are in trouble. Hathaway leisurely leaned back on the chair and chatted with Su Len. Indeed, Hydra's recovery ability is very strong. If this continues, Hydra's chances of winning are very high, Su Len said after watching for a while. Hathaway picked up a bear biscuit and said, "Do you think we should help those swamp giants? After all, one swamp giant died because of our plan." It's a little different between the two sides. How can I help? Are you going to do it, or should I? Su Len rolled his eyes at her. Besides, if we do it, won't it be obvious to both sides that someone is watching from the sidelines and waiting to benefit? Oh, that's true. Forget it then. As for the swamp giants, I can only say sorry. I don't think they'll mind. Hathaway once again saw a swamp giant being sent flying by the Hydra. I don't think they'll mind. Anyway, there's a direct conflict of interest between them. Although this swamp is not small, it can't accommodate 2 legendary powerhouses. Yes, that's it. Give it a good beating. Su Len waved his arms excitedly and shouted, "We have to be careful when we fight in the future. By the way, do you have pistachios with you?" Hathaway asked after eating a bear biscuit. Of course. Su Len took out a bag of pistachios from his storage space and handed it to Hathaway. "Thank you. I didn't expect you to have so much space in your storage equipment." Hathaway took the pistachios and gently broke them open and ate. "Didn't you learn Mageweth engraving? You've also learned those arcane scars. You can try to make a storage bag with more space by engraving," Su Len said while stuffing things into his mouth. "Yes, the Mageweth engraving method saves more space, and you can engrave more arcane scars. With more inscriptions, the space of the storage bag will naturally be bigger." Hathaway nodded. Is that swamp giant preparing to launch a sneak attack? He's so big. Does he think the Hydra can't see him? Hathaway continued after glancing at the battlefield. Although all 9 of the Hydra's heads were entangled, he still noticed the swamp giant. His body moved, and the tail hidden in the swamp suddenly swung out, sending the swamp giant who wanted to launch a sneak attack flying. However, the swamp giant's sneak attack was not useless. Another swamp giant took advantage of the Hydra's distraction to hit him hard. How long do you think they'll fight for? Su Len picked up a piece of beef jerky and ate it happily. I think it'll take at least an hour, Hathaway said after watching for a while. By the way, Frodo's cooking is getting better and better. This beef jerky is delicious. Indeed, the halflings are geniuses in cooking. Their food processing is simply irresistible. Hathaway agreed. He's almost emptied my inventory. I don't know how long he can stay in northern Battlefront City. Su Len spread his hands helplessly. Halflings usually didn't stay in one place for too long. They naturally like to travel. This time, Sulen relied on various cooking methods and various creative ideas to make Frodo stay. When Frodo learned all the recipes, or when Sulen didn't have anything new, it would be about time for Frodo to leave. I've asked Frodo for a recipe. I'll make it for you to try when we get back, Hathaway said with a smile. Forget it. Last time you said you were going to make a delicious dish. Don't you know what happened in the end? Sulen glanced at Hathaway and said, Don't underestimate me. This time I've learned from Frodo step by step. I'll definitely surprise you, Hathaway said confidently. I think I should prepare some gastric lavage, vomit-inducing potions, and antidotes in advance. Sulen rolled his eyes and said. Hathaway heard Sullen's words and glared at him fiercely. Then, she stepped on his toes and snorted arrogantly. She no longer looked at him. The battle was still very fierce. Both sides were obviously going all out. Judging from their posture, it was clear that they were going to fight to the death. The Hydra's injuries were very serious. One of his heads was obviously dead, and the other head had countless scars from the giant axe. Even the eyes of the middle head were pierced by expressions. The swamp giant leader was also seriously injured. 2 of his ribs were broken. The other swamp giants were also injured. In this situation, should we continue to fight to the death or prepare to retreat? Sulen said with a smile. He was now looking at the 2 sides fighting and had no intention of intervening. Although the Hydra seemed to be seriously injured, it was still difficult for him to die. The Hydra's recovery ability was very fast. If no one disturbed him, the Hydra's injuries would be almost healed in a short time. It's about time. Both sides have basically reached the final stage. We can make a move now. It'll be a big loss if we can't get the kill tonight, Sulen said with a smile. The Hydra is seriously injured, and the swamp giants are not doing well either. Get ready. I'll deal with the Hydra. You deal with the swamp giants, Sulen ordered simply. Hathaway nodded and said, Okay. A strong magic light appeared. Such a strong energy fluctuation instantly attracted the attention of both sides. The next second, Sullen's figure suddenly appeared beside the Hydra. Su Luen's body appeared in midair, and his whole body was shrouded in a layer of thunder and lightning power. The powerful thunder and lightning power kept flashing, and a long halberd completely surrounded by the power of thunder and lightning instantly pierced into the center of the Hydra. Lightning spear. The dazzling lightning power flashed. The next second, the purple dragon halberd with boundless power instantly pierced the Hydra's head. The layer of dark green scales was easily pierced through like paper. The purple dragon halberd's momentum did not decrease. It directly penetrated the skull. The hard skull could not withstand such a powerful force. The purple dragon halberd pierced the Hydra's head. The powerful electric current flowed along the river and destroyed the Hydra's brain. Along with an incomparably mournful scream, the Hydra's head powerlessly drooped down. The other heads were slightly paralyzed by the powerful lightning power. Thunderstorm. A powerful lightning energy instantly exploded out, and just as the Hydra's body was about to recover, it was immediately struck by a lightning bolt that was as thick as a water bucket. Bolts of lightning quickly descended, and the Hydra's body was charred black. Flesh and blood flew everywhere, and a large amount of lightning jumped about on its body. Even the Hydra's powerful healing ability was reduced to a minimum under this lightning energy. Smooth slash. 5-inch Sulen did not relax his vigilance. While the Hydra was attacked by the thunderstorm, his figure quickly streaked across the sky. The purple dragon halberd in his hand was constantly waving. The powerful force directly cut off several of the Hydra's heads. Blood splattered everywhere. There was an ear-piercing sound of metal and bone colliding. The Hydra was originally in a seriously injured state. After suffering such a fatal attack, its life force quickly slipped away. Its huge heads were cut off one by one. The Hydra's 18-meter-long body fell to the ground with a loud bang. If he wanted to kill the Hydra, he had to kill all of its heads. Su Luen seized the opportunity to launch a sneak attack while the Hydra and the swamp giant were both injured, and successfully killed the Hydra in one fell swoop. Chapter 378. Group Teleportation. When Sulen suddenly appeared, Hathaway's silhouette also appeared in the sky not far away. 12 barbarian marauders appeared with her. As soon as these barbarians appeared, they immediately activated God's descent. In an instant, 12 smaller giants appeared beside the swamp giants. Slow. Group haste. Draconic might. Group enchantment weapon. Rays of light shone from Hathaway's body, and an earthen yellow light flashed. The bodies of the surrounding swamp giants suddenly slowed down a beat. Following that, several rays of light shone, and the strength of the barbarian marauders rose to another level. The swamp giants were at the 4th rank, around level 16. They were a bit weaker than the frost giants, and they had just fought a fierce battle with the Hydra. Apart from the ones who had died, the rest were all injured. They were originally weaker than the barbarian marauders, and now they were all injured. The barbarian marauders at their peak were simply no match for them. The barbarian marauders at their peak bellowed and brandished their axes as they charged forward. The leader of the swamp giants saw his companions being beaten back and roared, throwing a huge rock at Hathaway. The watermelon-sized rock flew towards Hathaway like a cannonball. Bang! A figure jumped up high and waved the giant axe in his hand. With a bang, the giant boulder was smashed into pieces. It was Johnson. "Your opponent is me." Johnson half-knelt to reduce the impact from before and quickly charged forward. The leader of the swamp giants wasn't to be outdone either. Its eyes were bloodshot as it roared and charged forward. The two giants, one large and one small, collided with a loud bang. Although Johnson's strength wasn't inferior to the swamp giants after activating God's descent, the swamp giants were much bigger. They naturally had the advantage in a head-on clash. So, Johnson's body kept retreating, but the swamp giant's body wasn't in a good condition either. The powerful recoil made his injuries even worse. Greater Spell Sequence. Bursting Fireball *3, Enhanced Spell. Icicle *3. 3 huge fireballs shot out in a row. The swamp giant that was fighting Johnson couldn't react in time and was hit by the 3 bursting flames. Rumble. A violent explosion rang out, and even Johnson, who was nearby, was pushed back by the explosion. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Accompanied by a blood-curdling scream, the 4-meter-tall swamp giant was blasted more than 10 meters away, its body charred black. Then, 3 icicles flew out, instantly piercing the swamp giant's body. Under these consecutive attacks, the swamp giant was unable to resist at all, and its aura had been reduced by more than half. Its injuries were quite severe. A magic staff appeared in Hathaway's hand. In the next second, a wave of energy came from the staff, and magic runes lit up one after another. Hathaway quickly chanted a low incantation, and the instant she finished, she pointed at the swamp giant not far away. Death's Finger, Enhanced Spell. A black energy full of death aura flew out of her hand and hit the swamp giant in an instant. The already seriously injured swamp giant's struggling body suddenly stiffened and fell down. Its life aura quickly declined, and its originally powerful arm powerlessly drooped down. The light in its eyes quickly dimmed and disappeared. In the end, its 4-meter-tall body fell to the ground with a loud bang. Death's Finger was an instant death spell. As long as the target wasn't immune to instant death spells, it had a certain chance of directly killing the enemy. Of course, the chance of using this spell was very low, but after the target was weakened to a certain extent by various spells or serious injuries, the chance of using it would become very high. It was simply too good for an enemy that wasn't immune to instant death spells. With the death of the swamp giant leader, the morale of the other swamp giants plummeted. They panicked and wanted to run away, but they were chased down and killed by the barbarian marauders. With the swamp giant leader dead, the whole family naturally had to be organized. It didn't take much effort to kill the Hydra and the swamp giants. The battle is over. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed the chieftain monster. Hydra. Congratulations, host. Your hero Hathaway has successfully killed the chieftain monster. Swamp giant chieftain. You have received 45,600 EXP. You have received items. Big Dipper Nectar X1, Magic Gem, Ruby, X5. You have received Platinum Treasure Chest X2. Your army has killed the Swamp Giant. You have received 5,300 EXP. You have received items. Magic Steel X5. Battle of the Venomous Swamp. May year 1688 of the Huiwe calendar. A hydra appeared in the Venomous Swamp and invaded the Swamp Giant's territory. You schemed to incite a battle between the hydra and the Swamp Giant, and when they were both injured, you successfully killed 2 legendary monsters. Your name is widely spread in the northern wastelands. Your fame plus 20. Congratulations, host. You have killed the hydra leader. You have received 1 legendary skill point. With the end of the battle, a series of system notifications rang in Sullen's ears. Sulen, I feel like I'm going to break through. Hathaway suddenly said. Break through? You're going to break through to the legendary rank? Sulen looked at Hathaway in surprise. Hathaway nodded. Yes, I have a feeling. Sulen opened the system panel and looked for Hathaway's information. Sure enough, Hathaway's level had reached the edge of the legendary rank. Her EXP was overflowing, and she could advance at any time. Hathaway didn't level up now because she felt that it wasn't safe here. She wanted to go back to the Wizard Tower to advance to the legendary rank. Thinking about it, Hathaway had received the EXP from killing the Frost Giant Chieftain. This time, with the Swamp Giant Chieftain, she had killed 2 legendary monsters. Her EXP should be enough. That's great. Let's go back now, Sulen said excitedly. Next, Sulen and the others began to quickly search for the loot, mainly the corpses of the Hydra leader and the Swamp Giant. The Hydra leader and the Swamp Giant Chieftain didn't have the habit of collecting treasures. Naturally, they didn't have a lot of wealth like the dragons. Sulen only searched briefly and left after finding nothing. The bodies of the Hydra leader and the Swamp Giant were too large. Whether it was Hathaway's storage bag or Sullen's storage space, neither could fit them. As for throwing them away, Sulen couldn't bear to do so. He could only make a few large carts to drag these things away and send them back to Northern Town to deal with them later. The precious materials were handled by Hathaway on the spot and stored in Sullen's storage bag and Sullen's storage space. After spending some time cleaning up the battlefield, Sulen and the others left the swamp. When they returned to Northern Town, the huge corpses of the Hydra leader and the Swamp Giant Chieftain caused a huge uproar. These huge monsters were extremely shocking. Even the temples and churches were surprised by Sullen's strength. The corpses of the Hydra leader and the Swamp Giant Chieftain were high-value magic materials that needed to be processed and preserved as soon as possible. These things were handed over to Alex and Karina to deal with. The first thing Hathaway did when she returned to the Wizard Tower was to go into seclusion. Since Hathaway was about to advance to Legendary, Sulen directly closed the Wizard Tower temporarily. Apart from Alex, Chris, Karina, and Grace, everyone else left for the time being. Hathaway's advancement to Legendary was somewhat different from Sullen's. Sulen was closer to a warrior, while Hathaway was a pure spellcaster. She needed more elemental energy. After she entered the seclusion room, the Wizard Tower's elemental pool adjusted 80% of the energy supply to the room. At this time, the elemental energy in the room was so dense that it almost liquefied. As time passed, the energy in the elemental pool was quickly consumed. Because of the shielding circle set up in the seclusion room, the outside world didn't know the state of the room, so Hathaway's advancement didn't spread out. After waiting for about 3 hours, the door of the seclusion room finally opened. Hathaway walked out with a face full of excitement. As soon as the door opened, Alex couldn't wait to rush over and ask, "How was it? How was it? Did you succeed?" Judging from his expression, he must have succeeded. Chris, who was at the side, said with a smile. But why did her tone sound a little sour? Legendary Wizard. Huh? How do you feel? Karina asked. Hathaway smiled and said, "Successful advancement. I feel like I've seen the world again." Although there was only one rank between a legendary wizard and a great wizard, the difference was like heaven and earth. As a matter of fact, in terms of mana, the growth of the power of the will and the accumulation of mana from a beginner wizard to a great wizard was all about the accumulation of mana. Once a wizard reached the legendary rank, their soul would undergo a sublimation, and they would begin to come in contact with the essence of the world and understand the laws. This was the fundamental difference between a legendary wizard and a great wizard. When I reached the legendary rank, my soul seemed to come in contact with the source sea. It was a very strange feeling. When you all become legendary, you will feel it too. Hathaway briefly explained the changes of becoming a legendary wizard. Chris, Karina, Alex, and Grace all looked at her with envy. They were indeed very envious. One had to know that Hathaway's rank was the lowest back then, but now she was the first to break through to the legendary rank. They couldn't help but be envious. As a succubus, it was a little difficult for Chris to advance. She still had a third of her experience bar. As a sorcerer, Karina was also lacking a lot of experience. As for Alex and Grace, they weren't much better off. Congratulations on officially stepping on the path of a wizard, Sulen said with a smile. For ordinary people, the legendary rank was basically the end they could only look up to. But after becoming a legendary wizard, they understood that the legendary rank was just the beginning. Chapter 379. Hathaway becoming a legendary was a big deal for the northern battlefront city. It added a heavy weight to the northern battlefront city that was preparing to establish a new nation. Now that there was a legendary wizard, many things in the northern battlefront city could officially be put on the agenda. For example, the wizard tower spirit. A wizard tower spirit had to be at least a legendary rank before it could be made. Now that Hathaway had become a legendary wizard, it was time for the wizard tower spirit to be made. Only with a tower spirit could the wizard tower be considered a complete wizard tower. After Hathaway finished her advancement, Su Luan also started to check his harvest. He had taken the Big Dipper elixir to increase constitution. Su Luan's constitution had reached 44 points, and after taking the Big Dipper elixir, it increased to 47 points. The other magic gems and magic steel were directly stored in the warehouse. These two items were considered relatively precious magic materials. Small magic gems had auxiliary effects in many experiments, while large magic gems played a key role in many situations. They were also often used in some magic tools. As for magic steel, it had a wide range of uses. The outer shell of the steel golem was made of magic steel, and many constructs used magic steel. Su Len opened the storage space and saw two white treasure chests with a faint golden light. They were the platinum treasure chests he got from killing the Hydra. He chose to open the treasure chests, and there was a flash of light. The familiar sound of the system rang in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have received 10 pieces of Oniac steel. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the platinum treasure chest. You have received a legendary soul crystal. The light faded, and Su Len began to check the items in the treasure chest. Oniac steel was also a type of magic metal, and it was more precious than magic steel. 10 ingots of it were 500 kilograms. This metal had good magic conductivity, and its texture was tough. It also had high resistance to various types of energy. It was a very good material. Including this one, Su Luan now had 2 legendary soul crystals. One of them was prepared to be used to make a tower spirit, while the other was to be used to make a legendary golem. A wizard tower naturally had to be equipped with at least one legendary magic statue. After putting away these things, he began to deal with the bodies of the Hydra and the swamp giant. The Hydra's carcass was huge, and its scales and dragon skin needed to be removed. The Hydra's scales were tough, much tougher than the Ice Quetzalcoatlus' scales. The armor made from them would have a high defense, even higher than that of a normal white dragon scales. The Hydra had a large number of scales, and all of them could be used to make more than a dozen sets of armor. The Hydra skin was also very tough and could be used to make dragon skin armor and dragon skin robes. This kind of legendary material could be used to enchant even more powerful spells. Apart from the dragon skin that wasn't suitable to be made into magic robes, the rest of the dragon skin could be made into magic robes. Robes made from this legendary material had a high chance of reaching legendary magic items. Of course, the Hydra's skin alone wasn't enough. Many other precious materials were needed. After the scales and skin were distributed, Su Len began to divide the rest of the Hydra's materials. A huge monster that was 18 meters long had a lot of blood. Su Len found dozens of containers to hold the blood. The Hydra's weight was 20 tons, and its blood was only 1.5 tons. The Hydra had 9 hearts, each of which was 70 to 80 centimeters in diameter and weighed more than 25 kilograms. The poor quality blood could be used to make magic ink, and the good quality blood could be used to purify blood or make dragon blood potions. The rest of the internal organs could also be used as ingredients for magic potions. As for the Hydra's fangs, they were all pulled out to be made into short swords or machetes. The venom sac could be used to make poison, and the remaining bones and meat had their own uses. If Su Len was a necromancer, he could directly summon an undead Hydra, but now it could only be used as a magic ingredient. The meat could be used after being processed. This Hydra had a total of about 10 tons of meat. In order to preserve it for a long time, Su Len arranged for the meat to be made into dried meat. After dealing with the Hydra's body, Su Len began to deal with the swamp giant's body. The way he dealt with the swamp giant's body was similar to the way he dealt with the frost giant. Su Len also purified some blood from the swamp giant's blood. However, compared to the frost giant, the swamp giant's blood this time was much less. The quality of the swamp giant's blood was also slightly inferior to the frost giant's. In the end, the swamp giant's blood could only be used to inscribe the bloodline Mageweth on the 4 barbarians. Su Len planned to choose a few more barbarians to inscribe the Mageweth on them when he had time. In the following days, Su Len became very busy. A large amount of blood needed to be purified. A part of the Hydra's blood was concocted into mana ink, which could be used to write scrolls. The remaining part of the blood was purified by Su Len. The Hydra's blood contained a certain proportion of dragon's blood, which Su Len used a runic array to purify. Su Len only managed to extract a bottle of dragon's blood from the last ton of Hydra's blood. As for the rest of the dragon's blood, it could not be separated due to technical issues. The amount of dragon's blood in such a bottle was not even enough for one person. After the purification, there was only about 1% of the blood left. Although it was not pure dragon's blood, the Hydra's bloodline was not much worse than dragon's blood. This blood could be used to concoct a magic potion similar to the dragon's blood potion when combined with the Hydra's heart. Su Len was not good at this kind of magic potion. In order not to waste the materials, it was best to let Hathaway make it. After Hathaway became a legendary, her skills in concocting magic potions had improved a lot. Making these potions was a piece of cake for her. In just 2 days, Hathaway concocted the Dragon's Heart Potion using the Hydra's heart and blood. Dragon's Heart Potion, a high-level magic potion made from the Hydra's heart and blood that contained dragon's bloodline and more than 10 rare materials. After consumption, it can increase strength and vitality. There is a very low chance of awakening the dragon's bloodline. Note: the Dragon's Heart Potion can increase strength and vitality by 1 point for Constitution and Strength below 40. For Constitution and Strength above 40, it will increase strength and vitality by 0.5 points. It will not be effective for attributes above 45. The potion cannot be consumed continuously. A total of 9 bottles of the Dragon's Heart Potion were made. After seeing the attributes of the potion, Su Len was surprised. The increase in attributes was expected, but the fact that the Dragon's Heart Potion could awaken the dragon's bloodline surprised Su Len. The Dragon Bloodline Warlock was a very powerful type of warlock. Not only did the Dragon Bloodline Warlock have a strong body, but they also had the ability to cast spells. They were much stronger than ordinary warlocks. With this Dragon's Heart Potion and the Dragon's Blood Essence that he had purified before, he could cultivate a Dragon Bloodline Warlock. Su Len thought for a moment and took out a bottle of Dragon's Heart Potion and left the laboratory. After leaving the Wizard Tower, Su Len returned to the Lord's castle. "Master!" Anna and Angela appeared at the door. They looked very happy. During this period of time, Sulen had been busy and had not stayed in the castle for a few days. The two little half-elf maids lifted their skirts and bowed to Sulen. "Welcome back." Sulen smiled and hugged the two little maids in his arms. He then slapped their perky buttocks and let them go. "How have you been?" Sulen asked. "Everything is good," the two little maids said with slightly blushing faces. Sulen smiled and whispered in their ears, "I'll reward you tonight." Then the two little maids' faces became as red as apples, looking very attractive. "Oh right, where's Phyllis? What has she been doing?" Sulen looked around and asked. "Madame Phyllis has been practicing martial arts. She should be in the castle's training ground now," Anna whispered. Sulen nodded. "Send someone to invite her here. I have something to ask her." After a while, Sulen saw Phyllis hurrying over. Seeing Phyllis's outfit, Sulen's eyes lit up. As a princess, Phyllis was not just a pretty face. She had also learned the royal sword skills, but her strength was average. Phyllis had her long blonde hair tied behind her head. She was wearing a white hunting suit and a pair of riding boots. Her straight legs looked even more slender under the combination of the riding boots and the hunting suit. Her body looked slim and graceful, and there was a hint of heroism on her beautiful face. "Sulen, you were looking for me?" Phyllis ran to Sulen and asked with joy. "Yes, come with me. I have something to tell you." Sulen took Phyllis's arm and walked upstairs. Phyllis's white jade-like face suddenly turned red. She whispered, "Sulen, it's still daytime." Sulen was slightly taken aback. Then he knocked her head in annoyance. "What are you thinking? I have something to ask you." "Oh." Phyllis nodded with a red face, but there was a flash of disappointment in her eyes. The two came to the room. Sulen took out a bottle of Dragon Heart Potion and handed it to Phyllis. "This is the Dragon Heart Potion. It has a certain chance of allowing you to obtain the dragon bloodline and become a dragon disciple. Try it." "Dragon bloodline?" Phyllis looked at the crystal bottle in surprise. There was some red liquid in the bottle that kept shaking, and there were some sparkling stars in the liquid. "This is for me?" Phyllis knew very well that Dragon Disciple was a powerful extraordinary. "Yes, it has a chance of awakening. Try it and see the effect." Sulen nodded. Phyllis looked at the crystal bottle and then looked at Sulen. Then, she opened the crystal bottle and drank the potion. As soon as it entered her mouth, Phyllis smelled a strong bloody taste. She almost vomited. Fortunately, she knew the value of the potion and forced herself to drink it. Chapter 380. After Phyllis took the Dragon Heart Potion, Su Luan checked Phyllis's attributes for a while and found that there were no other changes except that her strength and physique had increased by 1 point. Sulen shook his head when he saw that there was no awakening of the dragon bloodline. "Good thing this potion can be stacked. I'll try again in a few days." Phyllis was a little disappointed, but she was relieved when Sulen said there was still a chance. In the next few days, Sulen began selecting barbarian great axe berserkers to help them level up into barbarian raiders. This time, the giant's blood could level up 4 people. One of them was Boulder and the other 3 were barbarians. Since he had a lot of experience, Sulen was very familiar with this kind of rune engraving. It took 3 days for the 4 barbarian raiders to finish. Other than Boulder and Johnson, who were heroic units, the rest of the barbarian raiders were still normal units. However, unlike the barbarians of the past, they were now called elite monsters. While Sulen was busy engraving runes on the barbarians, Phyllis also started her daily training. Ever since she was brought to the northern city as a tool for the marriage alliance, she felt a sense of crisis. She was very confident in her appearance, but after coming to the northern city, she quickly realized that she didn't have much of an advantage. There were more than one woman around Sulen who was prettier than her. Without the advantage of her appearance, Phyllis became a little nervous. She was worried that she would be sent to a random place. As a member of the royal family, she had heard too many stories about how the 2 sides of the marriage alliance would become strangers or even worse. Fortunately, Sulen didn't do that, which made her feel relieved. After living in the northern city for a while, She found that she liked life here. However, another thing made her worried again. She realized that none of Sullen's women were normal except for herself. From the wizard to the winged queen, from the succubus to the half-elf, she was the only normal human. This made her feel very disappointed. But after some time, she picked up the court swordsmanship from a long time ago. She didn't want to be a vase that would be casually discarded when she grew old. When Sulen saw her practicing her swordsmanship, he also found her a half-elf tutor. Just 2 days ago, Sulen had specially prepared a bottle of potion for her, which was said to be able to help her become a dragon disciple. However, after she took it, she didn't become a dragon disciple except for increasing her strength and body. This made her very disappointed. "Madam," just as she was in a daze, a middle-aged maid beside her bowed and said. Phyllis put the weapon back on the shelf, but the maid handed her a towel to wipe her sweat and said, "Have you sent the food over?" "It has been delivered, madam," said the middle-aged maid. "You guys go ahead and prepare dinner. I'm going to take a bath." Phyllis took off her tight hunting suit, revealing her white silk underwear. Her voluptuous body outlined her impressive curves. After changing into a loose bathrobe, Phyllis turned around and walked to the bathroom. The bathroom was steaming. Phyllis had worked out for a long time on the training ground today and was very tired. As soon as she went in, she took off her bathrobe, revealing her slender waist and plump buttocks. She reached out to test the temperature of the water, then raised her fair legs and stepped into the pool. Her curvaceous body slowly submerged in the water. However, as soon as she stepped in, Phyllis frowned slightly and whispered, "What's wrong? Why is the hot spring water a bit cold today?" "Someone!" Phyllis shouted outside. A series of footsteps came, and then a maid came in and asked respectfully, "Madam, what can I do for you? Why is the water a bit cold today? How long has it been since the water was changed?" Phyllis asked. "Cold?" The maid was a bit surprised. "Madam, the water was just changed." "Just changed the water?" Phyllis was a bit surprised. The maid took 2 steps forward and came to the side of the pool. When her fingers touched the hot water, she felt a burning sensation. "The water isn't cold." The water in the pool was slightly hot, and the temperature was at least 60 degrees. This temperature was a bit high for taking a bath. It even felt hot. Seeing that the maid's expression didn't seem to be fake, Phyllis seemed to feel that something was wrong. She knew the temperature of the hot spring water. When she soaked in the hot spring before, it was a bit hot, but today she felt that the water was cold. "Okay, you can leave now." Phyllis waved her hand and let the maid leave, but she still had some doubts in her heart. Although the water was a bit cold, Phyllis still soaked in the hot spring for a while. Bathing in the hot spring could restore her strength. She was a bit tired at the training ground today, but soaking in the hot spring would quickly restore her strength. After soaking in the hot spring for about 10 minutes, Phyllis stretched herself lazily. Her breasts rose in an exaggerated arc, which went down smoothly and then shrank quickly. After coming out of the bathroom, Phyllis put on a white silk nightgown, and several maids brought in a sumptuous meal. After a simple dinner, Phyllis asked the maids to take away the food, then got up and went to the study. She wanted to read for a while before resting. The next day, Sulen returned to the Lord's castle after completing the barbarian's rune inscription. Phyllis immediately came to see him. "What's wrong?" Seeing Phyllis hurrying over, Sulen asked curiously. "Sulen, there are some changes in my body," Phyllis said. Sulen was a bit surprised. "Changes? What changes?" Phyllis was a bit embarrassed. "I don't seem to be afraid of heat anymore." Sulen frowned slightly. "Not afraid of heat? Is this the awakening of the dragon warlock bloodline?" Thinking of this, Sulen hurried over to check Phyllis's pupils. When a dragon warlock awakened their bloodline, their pupils would become different from that of a human. They would be closer to the pupils of a dragon. After careful observation, Sulen found that there were no changes in Phyllis's pupils. "Come with me." After finding no changes, Sulen did not give up. Instead, he led Phyllis to a room. Sulen opened the system panel and found Phyllis's information. Soon, he saw a line of small words under Phyllis's information. Dragon Bloodline Awakening. Level of Awakening, low. Sulen was a bit surprised when he saw this line. Phyllis's situation was just beginning to awaken, but the effect was not good. Normally, when a dragon bloodline awakened, the dragon bloodline awakened would not be afraid of fire. Their strength would increase, and dragon scales would appear. However, Phyllis only had the ability to not be afraid of heat, which was a far cry from a warlock's awakening. "Take off your clothes," Sulen said to Phyllis as they entered the room. "Ah!" Phyllis was a little surprised. Then her pretty face flushed red. "Sulen, still daytime. Is it okay to do it at night?" "What are you thinking?" Sulen rolled his eyes at her. "I want to check the level of your awakening." "Awakening?" Phyllis immediately became excited. She grabbed Sulen's arm with both hands and asked, "I've awakened the dragon bloodline? Does that mean I can become a dragon warlock?" Sulen felt the amazing elasticity on his arm. A delicate fragrance wafted to the tip of his nose. There seemed to be a fire in his heart, but soon Sulen suppressed it. "You have indeed awakened the dragon bloodline, but the level of awakening is very low." "Really?" Phyllis's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. "Hurry up. Take off your clothes. I'll check," Sulen urged. "Oh!" Phyllis hesitated for a moment. Then, she undid her belt shyly. The silk robe slid down gently, and a beautiful jade-like body appeared in front of Sulen. She had full breasts, a slender and powerful waist, and slender and straight legs. She was only wearing thin underwear. Although they had seen each other many times, Phyllis was still a little shy. Under Sulen's fiery gaze, Phyllis's body trembled slightly, and a layer of rose color appeared on her skin. "Turn around." Sulen patted Phyllis and asked her to turn around. Then he reached out and touched her spine. Sulen touched her tailbone bit by bit. He was checking Phyllis's spine. After awakening as a dragon bloodline, a pair of dragon wing bones would gradually grow on the human spine. At first, dragon bloodline warlocks didn't have wings, but as their level increased, the dragon bloodline would gradually awaken. At this time, a pair of dragon wings would grow on both sides of the dragon bloodline warlock. This pair of dragon wings wasn't as big as the dragon wings of a giant dragon, and couldn't be used to flap them. Of course, they still had the ability to fly. Moreover, the dragon wings of dragon bloodline warlocks could be retracted. When they weren't in use, they could be put away. It was very convenient. Sulen was now looking for the dragon wing bone on Phyllis's body. Soon, Sulen touched a bone that was a little different from an ordinary spine. This bone was slightly protruding on both sides. This bone was the dragon wing bone, but it hadn't fully formed yet. Dragon wing bones would only grow on people who had awakened the dragon bloodline warlock's talent. As the dragon bloodline warlock awakened, it would gradually grow and eventually grow into a pair of dragon wings. "Is it done?" Phyllis couldn't help but ask when she felt Sulen stop. "Wait a minute, it'll be done in a moment." Sulen looked at the half-naked beauty in front of him, and the fire in his heart burned again. Phyllis turned her head and looked at him. She asked with some confusion, "Why did you take off your clothes too?" "Because I think you're a little shy." Sulen smiled and reached out to hug Phyllis. "No, it's daytime now." Phyllis instantly understood. Her body subconsciously wanted to resist, but how could Sulen let a fat sheep escape from his mouth? "What are you thinking?" "I'm just checking your body," Sulen said righteously. "This won't do." Ugh. Soon, some indistinct sounds came from the tightly shut door. Chapter 381. "Are you saying that my awakening of the dragon bloodline is poor?" Phyllis asked as she lay in Sulen's arms. "Yes, although you've awakened your dragon bloodline, the degree of awakening is very low, and your talent is not high either," Sulen said as he played with the smooth skin in his hand. "Then can I become a dragon bloodline warlock?" Phyllis asked worriedly. Su Len smiled. As long as I'm here, no matter how poor your talent is, you can still become a dragon bloodline warlock. It's not impossible for you to become a legendary warlock. Really? Phyllis asked in surprise. Of course. The two of them stayed in bed for a while before getting up again. After a simple meal, Su Len brought Phyllis to the lab in the wizard tower. Although Phyllis's talent was very poor, it was not impossible to change it. The talent of a warlock was different from that of a wizard or a druid. A warlock's talent depended on the concentration of their bloodline. The easiest way to improve a warlock's talent was to increase the concentration of their bloodline. Su Len had a few bottles of Dragon Heart Potion that could slightly increase the concentration of the bloodline. In addition, he also purified half a bottle of dragon blood. Although half a bottle of dragon blood was not enough for a person to awaken their dragon bloodline, it could still be used to increase the concentration of the bloodline. When they came to the lab, Su Len took out another bottle of Dragon Heart Potion and gave it to Phyllis. After taking the potion, the dragon bloodline aura in Phyllis's body increased slightly. At the same time, her strength and vitality also increased a little. Next, Su Len opened the bloodline magic circle in the lab. Light blue elemental energy slowly poured into it, and soon the whole circle lit up. "Take off your clothes and lie down," Su Len said to Phyllis. "Okay." Phyllis obediently took off her clothes again and lay down in the center of the circle. Next, Su Luen took out a delicate crystal bottle, which contained more than half a bottle of bright red blood. This blood was the dragon blood he had purified before. Su Len opened the crystal bottle and felt around Phyllis's spine. Phyllis felt a burning pain, and her body trembled slightly. Dragon blood was highly corrosive. According to the bards, bathing in dragon blood could make one invulnerable and strong, which made one's body very strong. There was some truth in this saying. However, the premise was that one's constitution was high enough to withstand the corrosion of the dragon blood. Moreover, in addition to its corrosiveness, the blood of the red dragon was like magma. Under normal circumstances, directly bathing in dragon blood would cause severe burns to a large extent. Although the blood of the white dragon would not burn, it would freeze people into ice. Hiss! Phyllis's body trembled slightly, and her muscles tightened. Obviously, she was in great pain. "Bear with it, it will be over soon." Su Len looked at Phyllis, who was biting her lips so hard that they were about to bleed. Phyllis nodded with some difficulty. "As long as I can become a dragon disciple, I can endure any pain." "Yes." Looking at Phyllis's expression, Su Len nodded slightly. The bloodline transformation circle was not difficult, and Su Len did not have a hard time operating it. Su Len put the crystal bottle that contained the dragon blood on the experiment table, and then took out some magic gem powder. With a snap of his fingers, a light flashed, and the powder instantly emitted a colorful light. Then, like a colorful ribbon, it flew up. Sullen's finger gently moved, and the ribbon quickly moved along with his finger. At this time, the dragon blood in the crystal bottle was also drawn out by a strange force. Strands of bright red dragon blood slowly extended from Phyllis's spine in the direction of Sullen's finger. The ribbon and the dragon blood quickly merged. Before she knew it, her entire spine was covered by the dragon blood. The dragon blood was the product of Sullen's purification. The dragon blood did not belong to a black dragon or a green dragon, but was similar to the color of the dragon blood in its initial state. Sullen's expression was very serious, and his eyes were sharp. His fingers moved quickly, and runes that seemed to contain mysterious power quickly formed in his hand. When the last rune was completed, Su Len picked up a magic staff and softly chanted. The surrounding elemental energy quickly gathered and formed a frightening magic wave. The last light flashed. Su Len gently pointed, and a huge amount of energy instantly poured into Phyllis's spine. Whoosh! A large amount of elemental energy poured into the laboratory and formed a slight elemental vortex. There was even an elemental siphoning phenomenon in the surroundings. The huge amount of energy in the elemental pool quickly poured out. Dragon blood baptism. Runes rose from the magic circle. These runes emitted a dazzling light and quickly merged with Phyllis's body. These runes carried a powerful force and quickly merged with the dragon blood. Then they completely merged with Phyllis's body. Phyllis's body trembled slightly. Her eyes became blurred, and her body trembled slightly. After the burning and corrosive sensation disappeared, strands of scorching energy emitted from her spine and quickly circulated throughout her body. As this energy circulated, Phyllis's body was also rapidly changing. The power of the bloodline in her body was also rapidly increasing. As the energy continued to circulate, Phyllis's body became stronger little by little. Sulen was slightly relieved. A sense of fatigue came over him. Although the dragon blood baptism was not difficult, it consumed a lot of energy. Alright, the ritual is completed. You can get up now. Sulen snapped his fingers and cut off the energy supply of the runic circle. The whole runic circle slowly dimmed. Done. Phyllis was a little stunned. Then, she got up and put on her clothes under Sulen's urging. Your body should be very strong now. The dragon blood baptism just now can strengthen your bloodline. You can feel the changes in yourself, Sulen said with a smile. I feel my body is full of energy, Phyllis said excitedly as she clenched her fist. This is just one of the changes. Sulen said affirmatively. The potential of a dragon bloodline warlock is quite amazing, especially a warlock with a strong bloodline like yours. If you can fully utilize it, it won't be difficult for you to advance to the legendary rank. Dragon bloodline warlocks were very powerful. They were born with great strength. After awakening their dragon bloodline, they would have dragon scales, dragon ability, dragon breath, dragon's constitution, dragon wings, and half-dragon transformation. In the beginning, dragon scales were only equivalent to leather armor. However, as dragon bloodline warlocks continued to advance, the defensive effect of dragon scales would continue to strengthen. In the end, dragon scales' defensive power would surpass that of plate armor, and it would also have a certain degree of magic resistance. Dragon ability allowed dragon bloodline warlocks to have strength comparable to legendary warriors. They could completely rely on strength to fight. Needless to say, dragon breath was a kind of power similar to dragon breath. This kind of dragon breath would gradually strengthen. Dragon's constitution would allow dragon bloodline warlocks to have a strong physique not inferior to warriors. Dragon wings allowed them to have the ability to fly. Half-dragon transformation allowed them to transform into some of the characteristics of dragons in battle. In the state of half-dragon transformation, the various strengths of dragon bloodline warlocks would be strengthened again. In fact, a powerful dragon bloodline warlock's close combat strength was not inferior to a warrior. Moreover, compared to warriors, they also had the ability to fly and cast spells. Although dragon bloodline warlocks' casting ability was weaker than that of ordinary warlocks, the gap was not big. Moreover, they also had dragon breath. In addition to these, dragon bloodline warlocks inherited the dragon bloodline, so their lifespan was also very long. The basic lifespan was more than 300 years. If they advanced to the legendary rank, their lifespan would be greatly extended. Dragon bloodline warlocks also had an enviable ability that was their strength would slowly increase over time, even a little bit when they were sleeping. This ability was very similar to dragon sleep. Phyllis had obtained the dragon bloodline as a red dragon warlock. The first ability she awakened was fire resistance. However, as time passed, this ability would gradually strengthen. Finally, she would gain fire resistance. After Sulen performed the dragon blood baptism on her, Phyllis awakened dragon ability. Her physical strength had been strengthened. Now, her strength attribute had directly increased by 3 points. If strength increased by 3 points every time she advanced, then Phyllis's strength would increase by at least 15 points. Of course, this was only the most basic. With some professional training, it would not be difficult for Phyllis's strength to exceed 35 points. Many legendary warriors, after advancing to the legendary rank, did not have the same strength. Okay. Now go to the training ground to test your ability, Sulen said after watching Phyllis move her body for a while. Okay. I still can't control the sudden increase in strength. Phyllis nodded. She had not yet adapted to the sudden increase in strength. Su Len took Phyllis to the 5th floor of the Wizard Tower. This floor was the training ground of the Wizard Tower. There were a total of 30 training grounds here. They used the space expansion technique to expand the space. These training grounds were blessed with various protective spells and were divided into levels. However, the training grounds in the Wizard Tower could only withstand the spell attack of a level 4 wizard at most. As for more powerful spells, they could only go to other places to practice. In fact, there were basically no training grounds that could withstand legendary attack spells. Su Len chose a level 2 training ground, which could withstand the destructive power of spells between level 0 and level 4. Phyllis had just become a dragon bloodline warlock. Although her strength had increased greatly, according to the destructive power, it was not at the level of a level 4 spell, so she could use all her strength. Catch! Su Len took out a long sword and handed it to her. Now that your strength has increased greatly, you can try swordsmanship first. Then, get used to it as soon as possible. Phyllis nodded and took the long sword. As soon as the long sword was in her hand, she could acutely feel that the weapon was much lighter. In fact, it was not the weapon that was lighter, but her strength had increased. Phyllis had learned palace swordsmanship before, so she began to practice it as soon as she got the weapon. Chapter 382. Phyllis waved her weapon and then launched an attack on Su Luen. Su Luen gently flicked her weapon away with his wooden sword, and then casually knocked Phyllis's calf with his sword. Focus, Su Len said in a deep voice. Sorry. Phyllis quickly got up, picked up her weapon, and got into a fighting stance. Ha! Phyllis once again waved her weapon at Su Len. But of course, she was easily defeated by Su Len. After a while of sparring, Su Len had a rough idea of Phyllis's strength. To be honest, Phyllis's combat awareness was not high, and the palace swordsmanship she learned was not very effective. The palace swordsmanship was developed from the battlefield swordsmanship, and there was nothing wrong with it. But later, the palace swordsmanship gradually began to be improved in the direction of rituals and patterns. In the end, this kind of swordsmanship was inclined to the performance type and was not suitable for fighting. Phyllis, don't learn the palace swordsmanship in the future, Su Len said. I'll ask the drows to teach you a swordsmanship suitable for fighting. Okay. Phyllis nodded. After awakening the dragon bloodline, Phyllis's strength had reached the 1st grade, but because she was not good at fighting, her strength could only be regarded as average, and it was completely due to the improvement of her physical fitness. Her current physical fitness was very strong, and she could basically crush ordinary knights. After a complete test, although Phyllis was very tired, she was very excited. She was obviously very happy with the power she had just gained. Take a rest, Su Len said with a smile. Since you've awakened the dragon bloodline, don't be lazy in the future. Okay. Phyllis panted and took the towel handed to her by the maid to wipe her sweat. After Phyllis awakened the dragon bloodline warlock, Su Len put away the remaining bottles of dragon heart potion. These potions could no longer increase the concentration of her bloodline. He planned to let others try it in the future. While Su Len was busy processing the materials from the Hydra and the Swamp Giant, Hathaway was studying the creation of the Tower Genie. It was very difficult to create a tower spirit. Originally, Hathaway had planned to use the normal method to create a tower spirit. However, after obtaining the Mageweth inscription technology, it could also be used to create a tower spirit. After some discussion, Su Len and Hathaway decided to use the Mageweth inscription technology to create a tower spirit. Initially, Su Len had thought that Hathaway would still need some time to learn this technique, and that it wouldn't be the best time to create the Tower Genie. However, he didn't expect that after advancing to the legendary level, her learning ability would also increase. It only took her a few days to completely master the Mageweth inscription technique. Compared to Su Len, who was a wizard who only focused on one subject, Hathaway, who had a formal wizard education and a part-time master alchemist, learned all kinds of skills much faster. She could learn all kinds of knowledge by analogy. When he saw Hathaway again, she was full of energy. Su Len, I'm going to make the tower spirit. Sullen's face lit up with joy. You've already mastered the Mageweth inscription technique? Yes, I've succeeded, Hathaway said with a smile. Then what are we waiting for? Let's make the tower spirit. Su Len excitedly pulled Hathaway directly to the wizard tower. The two arrived at the laboratory, where all kinds of equipment were ready. The energy of the elemental pool was turned on, and the concentration of elemental elements in the laboratory rapidly increased. Su Len took out a legendary-level soul crystal. This high-quality soul crystal looked very beautiful, like a bright gem. It contained powerful soul energy, which was the main material for making a tower spirit. Hathaway gently pointed with her finger, and a large amount of elemental energy rushed out. The rune circle that had been prepared in advance quickly lit up. Su Len handed the soul crystal to Hathaway, and Hathaway took out a magic staff. Then, she gently pointed at the soul crystal, and the purple soul crystal floated in midair. A chant was heard, and Hathaway summoned a ball of elemental fire that kept jumping. This elemental fire was a power that only a master alchemist could control. The blue elemental fire seemed to have no temperature, but it was actually very hot. She took out a piece of mithril and threw it into the elemental fire. Soon, the mithril melted into a silvery white liquid. Arcane powder, 13 ounces, Hathaway said to Su Len. Su Len skillfully weighed out 13 ounces of arcane powder with a balance and handed it over. Hathaway snapped her fingers, and the powder flew up and entered the fire bit by bit. Elemental powder, 6 ounces. Stardust, 1 ounce. As the elemental fire continued to burn, Hathaway added all kinds of magic materials. The original silvery white liquid gradually turned pale gold. When all the materials were fused together, Hathaway picked up the soul crystal with a serious face. She held the soul crystal with the sorcerer's hand and let it slowly enter the elemental fire. The blue elemental fire quickly wrapped around the soul crystal, and then it fused with the pale gold liquid. The fusion lasted for about an hour. When the two were completely fused, Hathaway breathed a sigh of relief. Of course, this was only the first step. The next step was to inscribe runes on the half-finished material. This step was very crucial. If there was a mistake in the runes, the material would have to be reforged. Every time it was reforged, it would lose a lot of soul energy and materials. Hathaway took out the tools she had prepared. Ordinary carving knives could not be used to inscribe runes, so she used a special tool. Powerful elemental energy gathered in mid-air. Hathaway activated the tool, and the half-finished soul core in front of her instantly enlarged from the size of a palm by a few hundred times. Next, Hathaway controlled the special carving knife and began to inscribe runes. These runes had been simulated in her mind hundreds of times. Although it was her first time doing it, she was very familiar with it. Runes quickly appeared one after another without any mistakes. The runes connected with each other, and finally, the entire soul core was engraved with runes. When the last rune was engraved, a light flashed, and all the runes lit up. Finally, they connected into one. Soul control. Hathaway snapped her fingers, and powerful magic waves emanated from her body. In the next second, a stream of soul energy was extracted from the soul core. Traces of vague whispers appeared in the laboratory, and the negative energy in the surroundings began to gather. If someone was here, they would clearly feel that the place had suddenly become gloomy. A huge amount of soul energy appeared. Although this soul energy had lost its consciousness, it quickly began to struggle and wanted to escape. Soul shackle. A pale golden chain suddenly appeared and directly entangled all the soul energy. The soul energy, which was still moving, immediately became obedient. Su Len lit up the ghost wood that he had prepared earlier. The ghost wood was a type of magical plant that grew in graveyards and other places with dense negative energy. It was usually used to make concentrating incense, which could increase the efficiency of a wizard's meditation. Could also protect and calm the soul. With the appearance of the smoke, the soul energy seemed to have become more solid. Soul construct, Hathaway softly chanted, and a purple light merged with the soul shadow. The soul shadow also began to undergo various changes. Hathaway continued to repair the soul energy. Soul weave. Rays of light flashed, and as time went by, the soul energy gradually became the appearance that Hathaway wanted. There were many types of tower spirits, from the combat tower spirits to the auxiliary tower spirits, to the dual-purpose tower spirits, and so on. Generally, wizard towers used auxiliary tower spirits or dual-purpose tower spirits. The tower spirits used in floating cities were large and comprehensive tower spirits. A floating city's tower spirit would be composed of many auxiliary tower spirits and combat tower spirits. Sullen's wizard tower naturally did not need so many tower spirits. The tower spirit that Hathaway made this time was a dual-purpose tower spirit. Because of the use of Mageweth inscription technology, the tower spirit made by Hathaway had a powerful computing ability, much stronger than the average tower spirit. The current world's tower spirit technology was only upgraded from the early tower spirit technology of the Arcane Empire era. Compared with Sullen's tower spirit, the gap was not small. This tower spirit would become the tower spirit of the wizard tower. It would assist Sulen and Hathaway in controlling the wizard tower, adjust the energy supply of the wizard tower, and command the puppet golems to patrol according to the predetermined route. It was the manager of the wizard tower. When the tower was invaded by foreign enemies, it would command the puppet golems to fight. After completing the soul construct and soul weave, Hathaway gently snapped her fingers, and the soul energy once again merged into the soul core. Soul fusion. With a flash of light, the soul core in midair returned to calm again. Hathaway breathed a sigh of relief and reached out to take the soul core and began to examine it. After finally confirming that everything was normal, Hathaway breathed a sigh of relief. But until now, the tower spirit was still not completed. Hathaway was not in a hurry to complete it. Instead, she took a short break. When her mental strength recovered to its best state, Hathaway began the next step. Activate the construct life. Soul awakening. The surging elemental energy was quickly extracted by Hathaway. Her mental strength guided the magic to quickly construct a complex magic array. Melodious spells were constantly chanted from her mouth, and a powerful magical wave appeared in the laboratory. A golden aura appeared out of thin air. The soul core, which was originally a dead object, seemed to have undergone other changes. The brilliance dissipated, and another soul wave appeared, followed by a strange life wave. Finally, all the light dissipated. The soul power was completely recovered, and a special construct life appeared. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.